Welcome back, deep divers. Today we're taking a plunge into a book that sparked countless conversations about money, and for good reason.
Oh, absolutely. Rich Dad, Poor Dad, right. A classic, and I can already see why you'd want us to unpack it.
Yeah, this one comes straight from a listener request, actually.
Yeah.
They're really interested in understanding, what the wealthy teach their kids about money, things that maybe aren't so obvious in, say, a poor or middle-class upbringing.
Yeah. Makes sense. It's kind of the central premise of the book, right? That contrast in financial education.
Exactly. So today we're on a mission to uncover those key insights. We're going deep on Robert Kiyosaki's Rich Dad, Poor Dad.
Perfect. I'm ready to dive in.
Me too. Okay, so first things first, Kiyosaki. This guy's known for shaking things up, wouldn't you say?
Yeah.
When it comes to conventional financial advice, he definitely doesn't hold back.
No, not at all. I mean, he's all about challenging the status quo, right? He's made a whole career of advocating for financial literacy, but from a perspective that you don't typically hear in the mainstream.
Definitely. And that's what makes this book so intriguing. It's a real exploration of two very different financial worlds, seen through the eyes of Kiyosaki and his experiences with two father figures, his own biological father, the poor dad, and his friend's father, the rich dad.
Yeah, the two dads are really the core of the book, aren't they? I mean, they represent these contrasting financial philosophies, right? One who struggles despite a good education, and the other who achieves success through unconventional wisdom.
Absolutely. So let's jump right into those contrasting viewpoints. Kiyosaki starts with something pretty fundamental, how each dad viewed money itself.
And it's so basic, but it really sets the stage for everything that follows. It's like a foundational belief that influences everything you do with money. The poor dad often said, the love of money is the root of all evil.
Oh yeah, I've heard that one a lot too.
Right. A pretty common saying, but the rich dad totally flipped it on its head. He argued the lack of money is the root of all evil.
Wow, it is kind of the opposite, isn't it?
Right. One makes you scared of money, while the other focuses on the problems that come from not having enough of it. That shift in perspective is huge.
Totally different mindsets. And another key contrast was where they believed financial education really happens.
This one's really interesting. Makes you think. Kiyosaki's point is that for most people, the real lessons about money come from home, what they see their parents doing, the beliefs they pick up, the whole financial atmosphere.
Unspoken curriculum.
Yeah, exactly. He calls it programming. It's like this financial blueprint that gets passed down through families, and it shapes your whole relationship with money.
Which really makes you wonder, right? How many of us actually had any formal financial education in school?
Not many, I'd bet. School's mostly about academics and getting you ready for a job, those professional skills that lead to a paycheck. But it doesn't often teach you what to actually do with that paycheck once you get it.
That's a good point. And I bet that's why you see people who are very successful in their careers, doctors, lawyers, even people in finance, but they struggle with money. They might be brilliant in their field, but they've never really learned the language of money itself.
Absolutely. It's like having a great recipe, but not knowing how to use the oven. All that potential, but without the practical skills to really make it work.
A perfect analogy. And this kind of leads into another major difference between the two dads, their perspectives on financial responsibility.
Yeah, the rich dad was all about self-reliance. He
Mm.
really emphasized becoming financially competent, like it was a core life skill. And he really pushed back against what he called an entitlement mentality. The idea that someone else is going to take care of you financially, whether it's the government or your employer.
Right, take charge of your own destiny kind of thing.
Exactly. Take control of your own finances, your own future.
While the poor dad, even with his good intentions, always seemed to be in a struggle.
Yeah, you see that contrast even in something as basic as saving versus investing. One dad is always trying to cut back and save, which is good, of course, but it only goes so far. The other dad is actively looking for ways to make his money grow, to make it work for him, rather than just trying to hold on to it.
Means you think about where you're putting your energy, right? You're
Yeah.
playing defense or offense with your money.
Exactly. And then there's our whole outlook on jobs. That's a huge difference.
The real clash of perspectives.
The poor dad focused on the traditional route, right? Get a good education, get a secure job. That was his idea of success. But the rich dad, he was teaching Robert and Mike about business plans, financial strategies. He wanted them to think about creating jobs, being the ones in charge.
It's a real shift in mindset, isn't it? From employee to entrepreneur, from seeking security to building something of your own.
Absolutely. And underlying all these contrasting viewpoints, there's this core idea about the power of thought, the power of your own beliefs about money.
Okay, yeah. That's a big theme in personal development, isn't it?
It is. Kiyosaki argues that your beliefs about money actually shape your financial reality. If you believe money is scarce and hard to come by, you'll probably act in ways that make that true. But if you believe in abundance and opportunity, you'll likely make different choices, take different risks, and, as a result, see different outcomes.
It's like a self-fulfilling prophecy, in a way. If you believe you can't, you probably won't.
Exactly. You have to believe in the possibility first. Now, the book really brings these contrasting mindsets to life through some pretty memorable early lessons and experiments that Kiyosaki and his friend Mike go through. And the first one, well, it's a little bit ambitious. Let's just say it involves a counterfeit money scheme.
A counterfeit money scheme. Okay, I have to hear this.
So picture this. Young Robert and Mike, maybe 9 years old or so, get motivated by seeing these older kids hanging out at their neighbor Jimmy's beach house, and they decide they need money to have that kind of fun. So their solution. They come up with this ingenious plan to melt down toothpaste tubes to make nickels.
Melted toothpaste. That's not creative, I guess.
Very creative, but not exactly legal.
No, definitely not. So how did they even try to pull that off?
Well, they used the white powder, the residue from the toothpaste, and milk cartons as molds. And their furnace, the family's hibachi grill.
Wow, they were really committed, their own little backyard mint operation. So what happened? Did they actually make any money?
Well, their driveway basically became this little, very illegal mint. They were covered in white dust, proudly showing off their operation. And then Robert's dad comes home with a friend and walks right into this scene.
Oh my gosh, I can only imagine. A box full of suspiciously empty toothpaste tubes.
And a couple of very proud, very dusty 9-year-olds. And here's where the dad's reactions get really interesting. The friend just laughs it off, even jokes that maybe they have a natural talent for this sort of thing.
Oh no, that's both hilarious and a little bit terrifying at the same time.
Right. Not exactly the best endorsement. But Robert's dad, the poor dad, while explaining that, yeah, counterfeiting is illegal, he also praises their creativity and their initiative. He tells them not to quit, which, in a way, is a pretty valuable lesson itself.
Yeah, I see what you mean. Even though the idea was totally wrong, the drive to try something was something he valued.
Exactly. It's about fostering that entrepreneurial spirit, even if it takes a few detours along the way. Now, the next early lesson involves actual paid work, although the pay was minimal, to say the least.
Okay, let's hear about this one. What was the job?
This is the 30 cents later lesson. Robert and Mike get their first jobs working for Mike's dad at his store cleaning shelves.
It sounds simple enough.
It was, for 10 cents an hour.
10 cents an hour. Wow, that's not a lot.
Not at all. So Robert, you can imagine, is pretty excited at first. But after his first day, he gets a grand total of 30 cents. He's ready to quit right then and there.
I wouldn't blame him. That's rough.
Right. But it turns out that Mike's dad had actually anticipated this. He knew Robert would be frustrated, and he wanted to talk to him specifically when he was about to give up. It was kind of a deliberate setup, a teaching moment in disguise.
Interesting. So it wasn't really about the 10 cents. It was about the lesson behind it.
Exactly. And Robert's own dad, the poor dad, he's actually furious about the low pay. He tells Robert to demand at least 25 cents an hour or walk out. He even calls it a damned job. It really shows that traditional mindset, focusing on getting what you perceive as a fair wage for your time.
Makes sense, but it's also kind of limiting, isn't it?
It is. The rich dad, Mike's dad, had a totally different perspective. When Robert finally goes to talk to him, he explains that the low pay was intentional. He wanted Robert to experience what it felt like to work for very little money, to feel that frustration, to understand the difference between working for money and having money work for you.
Wow. It's like he used that 10 cents an hour as a trigger, a way to spark a much deeper understanding.
Exactly. And he points out something really important. He says that Robert's own father went to school to get a good job, a high-paying job. But he still struggles with money because he never really learned how money works.
He had the earning part down, but not the managing or growing part.
Right. And the rich dad emphasizes that if you just want to learn how to work for a paycheck, then school is the right path. But if you want to understand how to make money work for you, that requires a different kind of education altogether.
That's a big distinction, isn't it?
It is. And he connects that low pay to another powerful emotion: fear.
Fear.
Yeah, he explains that fear is what keeps most people locked into jobs they may not even like. The fear of not paying their bills, the fear of getting fired, the fear of not having enough, the fear of having to start all over.
I can see that. Those fears are real.
They are. And he argues that by just focusing on learning a profession and working for a wage, people can become, in a sense, slaves to money, and they end up resenting their jobs, resenting their employers because they feel trapped.
That's a powerful image, and not a very pleasant one.
No, it's definitely not. And then, even with that tiny 30-cent paycheck, Robert learns another important lesson about taxes.
Oh yeah, taxes. We can't forget those.
Even from those few coins, Robert sees that a chunk is already taken out. And the rich dad uses this to explain a simple but often overlooked truth. The government always gets its share first. When you earn, when you spend, when you save, even when you die.
It's unavoidable.
It is. And that early exposure to the reality of taxes is, in a way, a key part of understanding the financial landscape.
So those early experiences really lay the groundwork for what Kiyosaki calls avoiding life's biggest trap. And there's a really memorable scene at a picnic table that really illustrates this concept.
Oh yeah, this scene's a good one. It really highlights a mindset that keeps a lot of people stuck. The rich dad takes Robert and Mike to a park, and they observe a few people. There's Mrs. Martin, the housekeeper, and then some guys playing softball. He uses them as examples of people who work hard but don't get ahead financially.
Because they're stuck in the rat race, right?
Right. They're working for wages, clinging to job security, hoping for a pension someday.
And when Robert objects, saying that those are good, hardworking people, the rich dad doesn't disagree. He's not judging their character, but he's challenging their financial thinking.
Exactly. He's not saying they're lazy or bad people. He's pointing out a pattern. He explains that their financial decisions are often driven by their emotions, not by logic. They work out of fear that they won't be able to pay bills, fear of losing their jobs.
And that fear keeps them in that cycle.
It does. And then when they do get a little money, other emotions kick in. Joy, desire. And instead of thinking strategically, they spend it, often impulsively, because they're trying to fill that emotional need, that sense of lack.
So they're constantly reacting to these emotions instead of making conscious, informed choices.
Exactly. He uses this analogy of a donkey chasing a carrot.
The donkey and the carrot.
Yeah, it's a classic. The donkey keeps working, keeps striving, because it wants that carrot, the money, the reward. But it never quite gets there. It's a metaphor for how fear and desire can control your financial life if you let them. You're always chasing, always wanting, but never truly feeling satisfied or secure.
It's like being on a treadmill that never stops.
Exactly. And that's the trap. The rich dad emphasizes that you have to learn to choose your thoughts instead of just reacting to those emotions.
So instead of just going to work because you're afraid of not paying your bills, you take a step back and think, is this really the best way to solve this problem? Are there other options I haven't considered?
Exactly. It's about breaking free from that emotional grip on your financial decisions and starting to think strategically.
Okay, so that's a huge mindset shift.
Yeah.
But how do you actually start learning to make money work for you? That's where it gets really practical, right?
It is. And one of the key turning points for Robert and Mike was their agreement to work for Mike's dad for free.
For free. That seems counterintuitive.
It does. But the idea was that by taking the focus off immediate earnings, their minds would be more open to seeing opportunities that they might have missed if they were just fixated on getting a paycheck.
Okay, so it was about expanding their awareness, seeing the bigger picture beyond just earning a wage.
Exactly. And this is where the comic book library story comes in.
Ah, the comic book library. I remember this one. Tell me about it.
So they're working at the store, no pay, and they notice all these unsold comic books just sitting around, and it sparks an idea. They decide to set up a lending library in Mike's basement.
Smart.
Right. They charge a small fee to borrow the comics. They even recruit Mike's sister to be the librarian.
Wow, they built a whole system. Did it actually work?
It did. They were averaging about $9.50 a week, which for kids their age was pretty good. And the key takeaway was that this little business, even though it had to shut down eventually because of some issues with the neighbors, it generated income even when they weren't physically working. Their money, in the form of those comic books, was working for them.
That's a powerful lesson. Passive income.
Exactly. And that's the first big lesson they really solidify. The power of making money work for you, of not being solely dependent on a job for income.
It's about building assets, right?
Absolutely. Which leads us to the crucial concept of financial literacy.
Yes, that's a big one. And to really drive this point home, Kiyosaki shares a story that's kind of sobering. It's about some of the richest businessmen of 1923.
Oh, I remember this one. It's a cautionary tale, isn't it?
It is.
Yeah.
He talks about all these incredibly successful people, heads of corporations, Wall Street tycoons, a guy who was in the president's cabinet. They were at the top of their game, incredibly wealthy. But 25 years later, Many of them were broke, in prison, mentally ill, some even committed suicide.
It's a stark reminder, isn't it? Money doesn't solve everything.
It really isn't a guarantee of happiness or even long-term security, and it highlights the importance of something beyond just making money.
Exactly. It's about understanding how money works, how to manage it, how to make it work for you, not against you. And this brings us to Kiyosaki's fundamental rule about assets and liabilities.
Okay, this is a big one. Assets versus liabilities. It's at the core of his whole philosophy.
It is, and he keeps the definitions really clear. An asset is something that puts money into your pocket. A liability is something that takes money out of your pocket.
Simple, but powerful.
Right. It's about understanding the direction of cash flow.
And he contrasts this with how the poor and middle class often operate.
Yeah, they tend to acquire things they think are assets, but they're actually liabilities, expensive houses with big mortgages, fancy cars with loans, credit card debt.
They're spending money they haven't even earned yet.
Exactly. And those things just keep costing them money month after month. It's like digging a deeper and deeper hole.
And he uses those simple diagrams to show the difference in cash flow patterns, right?
He does. It makes it really clear. On one side, you have assets feeding your income. On the other side, you have liabilities draining it away. It's the relationship between the income statement and the balance sheet.
The income statement showing what you earn and spend, and the balance sheet showing what you own and what you owe.
Exactly. And understanding that relationship is essential for building wealth.
It's about seeing the whole picture, not just focusing on your paycheck.
Right. And this understanding of cash flow helps explain why so many people, even those with good incomes, struggle financially.
Yeah. They might be good at making money, but they're not so good at managing it or making it grow.
It's what Kiyosaki calls a lack of financial aptitude.
Financial aptitude, that's a good term for it.
It is. It's about what you do with the money once you have it.
It's the skill set that's often missing, right?
Unfortunately, yeah. And without it, you can end up in what he calls the rat race.
The rat race, that's such a vivid image.
It is. It's that cycle of working harder and harder, making more money, but your expenses just keep going up too. Bigger house, nicer car, more stuff, and more debt. You never really get ahead.
It's like running on a wheel.
Exactly. And it's a trap a lot of people fall into. They're focused on the wrong things. They're chasing a lifestyle instead of building true wealth.
And I imagine there's a lot of social pressure too.
Oh yeah, definitely. People want to keep up with the Joneses, fit in, not stand out.
It's that fear of being different, of being judged.
Exactly. And that fear can keep people from even exploring other options, other ways of thinking about money.
So how do you break free from that cycle? How do you start minding your own business, as Kiyosaki puts it? What does he mean by that, anyway?
Well, it's not about ignoring your job or starting a company necessarily. It's about focusing on building your asset column, not just your income column.
It's about that shift from earning money to owning things that make money.
Exactly. And he introduces this really interesting definition of wealth from Buckminster Fuller.
Oh yeah, I was wondering when that would come up. I've always loved that definition.
It's a good one, isn't it? Fuller defines wealth as the ability to survive a certain number of days forward if you stopped working today.
So it's not about how much money you have in the bank. It's about how long you could survive without a paycheck.
Exactly. It's about having assets that generate income, passive income that keeps coming in even when you're not actively working.
And that leads to true financial freedom. Yeah.
It does. And he makes sure to distinguish between your profession, which is how you currently earn money, and your business, which is essentially your asset column.
Your personal wealth building machine.
Exactly. And he encourages you to actively build that regardless of what you do for a living.
Okay, so what are some examples of these assets? What should we be looking at?
Well, he mentions things like businesses that don't require you to be there all the time, stocks, bonds, mutual funds, income-generating real estate, royalties from things like books or music, anything that has the potential to generate passive income.
Got it. So it's not about stuff, it's about income-producing assets.
Exactly. And he also talks about how the wealthy approach buying luxuries differently.
Oh yeah, I'm curious about this. How is it different?
While the rich tend to buy luxuries last, they use the income generated by their assets to buy those things.
So they're not going into debt for a fancy car or a big house.
Not usually. The poor and middle class often buy luxuries first, often going into debt to do so. They want to look wealthy, but they're actually digging themselves deeper into a hole.
Makes sense. It's like putting the cart before the horse.
Exactly. You have to build that solid financial foundation first.
Now, another area where the rich dad offers a really different perspective is on the topic of taxes and corporations. This is where things get a little bit complex, right?
They can, but it's really important to understand. He challenges that whole Robin Hood idea,
Yeah.
taking from the rich to give to the poor.
Right, but doesn't that happen?
Well, he argues that while that might have been the initial intention, the government needs more and more money over time. And eventually, the tax burden ends up falling most heavily on the middle class.
Interesting. So the rich aren't necessarily paying the most in taxes.
Not always. He explains that the rich often use corporations to minimize their tax burden.
Corporations. Okay, how does that work?
A corporation is a separate legal entity. It's like a shield that protects your personal assets and also allows you to take advantage of different tax rules.
So you're not personally liable for the corporation's debts.
Right. And corporate tax rates are often lower than individual rates. Plus, corporations can deduct certain business expenses, things like travel, company cars, sometimes even health club memberships.
Wow, so there are some significant advantages.
There are. And he emphasizes that financial literacy is key to understanding these structures and using them legally and ethically.
It's about knowing the rules of the game, right?
Exactly. And those who don't understand the rules end up paying more than they should.
So this all ties into the idea of financial intelligence. What does it actually take to be financially intelligent?
Well, Kiyosaki breaks it down into 4 main skills. First, there's financial literacy, being able to read and understand numbers, financial statements, that sort of thing.
Basic language of money?
Exactly. Second, there's investing, understanding how to make your money grow, how to put it to work for you.
Okay, what else?
Third, understanding market supply and demand, how prices fluctuate, those kinds of things.
Got it.
And fourth, he emphasizes the importance of knowing the law, corporate law, tax law, accounting principles.
The legal side of things.
Exactly. You have to know the rules to play the game effectively.
And he created that game, Cash A Chef Flow, to help people learn all of this.
He did. It's a fun way to experience these concepts firsthand, to make decisions and see the consequences without actually risking real money.
I've heard it's a really good tool.
It is. And he emphasizes that developing financial intelligence can actually help you create your own luck.
Create your own luck.
Yeah, it's about being able to spot opportunities that others miss, to see the potential in things that others might overlook.
Because you understand how money works.
Exactly. He gives this great example of inventing money by buying a distressed property, a house that's worth more than it's selling for, and then creating a note that generates cash flow without being immediately taxed.
Interesting. So it's about thinking creatively, finding unconventional ways to generate income.
It is. And he also talks about 2 different types of investors. The first type invests in packaged products like mutual funds, things that are already put together.
A more traditional approach.
Right. But the second type, the more sophisticated investor, they're looking for opportunities that others have missed. They know how to raise capital, how to manage risk. They're thinking outside the box.
The real deal makers.
Exactly. And he emphasizes something that's often overlooked, the importance of sales and marketing skills.
Oh yeah, those are crucial for any business.
They are. He gives the example of a really talented writer who can't sell their books. It shows that just being good at something isn't enough. You have to be able to communicate your value, to connect with your audience.
To sell your ideas.
Exactly. And he even suggests that network marketing can be a good way to develop those skills.
Interesting.
It is. It teaches you how to build relationships, to communicate effectively, to persuade.
Essential skills in any field.
Absolutely. And then there are the management skills, managing cash flow, systems, and people.
Those are crucial for running any business, including your own personal finances.
Right. You're essentially the CEO of your own life. And he also addresses a big obstacle that many people face, the fear of losing money.
Yeah, that's a big one. It can really hold people back.
It can. But he makes the point that everyone experiences fear, even the wealthy. The difference is how they handle it.
So it's not about eliminating fear, it's about managing it.
Exactly. The wealthy understand that failure is part of the process. They don't let fear paralyze them.
They learn from their mistakes and move on.
They do.
So how does someone who's maybe just starting on this journey get started? What are some concrete steps they can take?
Well, first and foremost, commit to ongoing financial education.
Read books, listen to podcasts, take courses.
Exactly. And he stresses the importance of keeping an open mind, of being willing to challenge your own beliefs.
To think differently.
Yes. And he also recommends finding mentors, people who have already achieved the kind of success you want.
Learn from those who have walked the path.
Exactly. Ask questions, get advice. He even tells a story about how he learned about tax lien certificates by taking a county employee to lunch and picking his brain.
Nice.
It's about being proactive, seeking out knowledge from those who have it.
And taking action. Right.
Absolutely. It's
Yeah.
not enough to just know the information, you have to use it. He encourages people to make offers on real estate, even if they seem low, because you never know what might happen.
Put yourself out there.
Exactly. And he stresses the importance of shopping for bargains.
Buying when the market is down.
Exactly. And thinking big. Don't limit yourself with small thinking.
Dream big, think big, act big.
Exactly. And he reminds people that all those big companies, all those successful businesses, they all started small.
It's a journey, not a sprint.
It is.
And then there's the principle of paying yourself first. What's that all about?
This is a big one. It means putting money aside for your asset column before you pay any other expenses.
So you're prioritizing your own financial well-being.
Exactly. You're making it a non-negotiable part of your budget.
Before you even pay your bills.
Yes.
Yeah.
The idea is that it creates a sense of urgency, a pressure to find ways to earn more to cover those other expenses.
Interesting strategy. And he also recommends paying good professionals well.
He does. He talks about attorneys, accountants, brokers. Their expertise can save you time, money, and headaches in the long run.
It's about investing in the right people.
Exactly. And then he uses this funny term, Indian giver.
Indian giver.
Yeah, in investing, it means getting your initial investment back quickly and then looking for ways to get additional assets for free.
So you're basically getting your money back plus some.
Exactly. It's
Well,
a way to maximize your returns.
smart.
And he also talks about how he used his son's desire for a car as a teaching moment.
Oh, yeah, I remember this story.
It shows how you can use those natural desires as opportunities to learn about financial responsibility.
Instead of just giving in and buying the thing, you turn it into a learning experience.
Exactly. And he emphasizes the power of focus.
Focus. Yeah, that's important in any area of life.
It is. And when it comes to money, focus allows you to direct it towards building assets that will create more money for you in the future.
Instead of just spending it on stuff that loses value.
Exactly. He gives the example of how if you give 100 people $10,000, most of them will have nothing left after a few months, but a few will turn it into much more.
That's a pretty stark contrast.
It is, and it comes down to focus.